My name is Rosa, and I am 37 years old. I never thought I would be telling this story, but here I am. For 15 years, I sat at that Thanksgiving table, smiling through the insults, swallowing my pride like it was part of the meal. My husband Marcus had a way of making me feel small, especially when his family was watching. But that year, everything changed. My 15-year-old daughter Lily stood up and said one sentence. Just one. And every single person at that table went silent. Marcus turned pale. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. What my daughter said that day changed everything, so stay with me until the end. I met Marcus 16 years ago at a small coffee shop in downtown Boston. It was one of those rainy November afternoons where the whole city seemed to slow down. I had just finished a long day at my accounting firm, and all I wanted was a warm cup of coffee and maybe 10 minutes of peace. The shop was crowded, and the only empty seat was at a table already occupied by a man with kind eyes and a crooked smile. He looked up at me and said, "I promise I don't bite. Please sit down." That was Marcus. Charming, effortless, and so incredibly warm. We talked for 3 hours that day. He made me laugh until my stomach hurt. He told me about his dreams of climbing the corporate ladder, about his complicated relationship with his mother, about his grandmother, who made the best apple pie in all of Massachusetts. By the time the coffee shop closed, I knew I was in trouble. The good kind of trouble, or so I thought. Our first official date was at the harbour. Marcus picked me up in his old Honda Civic, the one with the broken air conditioning and the radio that only played static. He brought me flowers that day. Not roses from some fancy florist, but wildflowers he had picked from the side of the road on his way to my apartment. They were slightly wilted and mismatched, but I thought it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for me. We walked along the pier as the sun set over the water. He held my hand like I was something precious, something worth protecting. He looked at me that evening with such intensity, such focus, like I was the only person in the entire world. I remember thinking to myself, this is it. This is the man I am going to marry. And I did. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony at his grandmother's backyard. There were maybe 40 people there, mostly family and a few close friends. I wore a simple white dress that I found at a thrift store, and Marcus wore his father's old suit. It was not fancy, it was not expensive, but it was ours, and it was perfect. Patricia, my mother-in-law, was different back then. She smiled at me during the ceremony. She hugged me after we said our vows. She even pulled me aside and whispered, "Welcome to the family, Rosa. Take care of my boy." I believed her. I believed that I was truly becoming part of something bigger than myself. 2 years after the wedding, our daughter Lily was born. I still remember the moment the nurse placed her in my arms. She was so tiny, so fragile, with a full head of dark hair, and the loudest cry I had ever heard. Marcus stood beside me, tears streaming down his face. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "You did it. You gave me the greatest gift." Those early years were hard but beautiful. We lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building. The heating was unreliable, the neighbors were loud, and we barely had enough money to cover rent. But we were happy. Marcus would come home from work exhausted, but he always made time to hold Lily, to sing to her, to tell her stories about adventures she would have when she grew up. I quit my job to take care of Lily for the first 3 years of her life. It was not an easy decision, but Marcus and I agreed it was the right one. He worked overtime to make up for the lost income, and I stretched every dollar as far as it could go. We were a team. At least that is what I thought. Marcus's grandmother, who everyone called Nana, became my closest ally in those years. She was a petite woman with silver hair, and hands that were always busy knitting or baking. She taught me how to make her famous apple pie, the one Marcus loved so much. She would sit with me in her kitchen for hours, sharing stories about her youth, about the wars she survived, about the love she lost and found again. Rosa, she once told me, marriage is not about perfection. It is about choosing each other every single day, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. I held on to those words like a lifeline. I believed that as long as Marcus and I chose each other, we could survive anything. I believed that the love we built in that tiny apartment would carry us through whatever challenges lay ahead. I believed that I had finally found my forever. Looking back now, I realize I was so focused on building a future that I failed to see the cracks forming in the foundation. The signs were there, small and subtle at first. But I was too in love, too hopeful, too desperate to believe in the fairy tale I had created in my mind. I had no idea that the man who once picked wildflowers for me would one day tear me apart with his words. I had no idea that the family who welcomed me with open arms would one day treat me like an outsider. And I certainly had no idea that my 15-year-old daughter would be the one to save me. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to when the first cracks began to show. When Lily turned 3, I decided it was time to go back to work. We needed the extra income, and I missed the sense of purpose that came with having a career. I found a position as an accountant at a mid-sized company about 20 minutes from our apartment. The pay was decent, the hours were manageable, and I was excited to contribute to our family again. But something shifted in Marcus the moment I returned to work. It was subtle at first, so subtle that I almost missed it. He started making little comments here and there. Nothing too harsh, nothing too direct. Just enough to plant seeds of doubt in my mind. "You look tired, well," he would say when I came home from work. "The house seems messier now that you are not here all day. Lily seems fussier. Maybe she misses having you around." I internalized every single word. I started waking up at 5 in the morning to clean the house before leaving for work. I meal prepped on Sundays so that dinner would be ready the moment I walked through the door. I spent my lunch breaks researching parenting tips, trying to figure out how to be a better mother despite working full-time. I bent over backwards to prove that I could do it all, that I could be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect employee. I did not realize it then, but I was slowly erasing myself in the process. Patricia started visiting more frequently around that time. She would show up unannounced, usually when Marcus was at work, and I was rushing to get Lily ready for daycare. She would walk through the house with a critical eye, running her finger along surfaces to check for dust opening cabinets, to inspect how I organized the dishes. "Rosa," she said one afternoon, "this is not how we do things in our family. The spices should be alphabetized. The towels should be folded in thirds, not halves. Did your mother not teach you these things?" I bit my tongue and smiled. I apologized and promised to do better. I did not tell her that my mother had passed away when I was 19, that I had learned most things on my own, that I was doing the best I could with what I had. One comment in particular stayed with me for years. Patricia was standing in my kitchen reorganizing my pantry without asking permission when she turned to me and said, "My son deserves someone who can take care of him properly. I hope you can become that person someday, Rosa." I waited for Marcus to defend me. I waited for him to tell his mother that I was a good wife, that I was trying my hardest, that her words were unfair and unkind. But he just shrugged and said, "Mom is just trying to help, Rosa. Do not be so sensitive." That was the first time I felt truly alone in my marriage. The first Christmas after I returned to work was when everything became painfully clear. We drove to Patricia and Harold's house in the suburbs, Lily strapped into her car seat, a casserole dish warm on my lap. I had spent hours preparing that casserole. I followed a recipe I found online, adjusted it to accommodate Harold's dietary restrictions, and even added a special garnish I thought Patricia would appreciate. When we arrived, I presented the dish with pride. I set it on the dining table alongside the other food, feeling a small sense of accomplishment. Maybe this would be the year I finally earned my place in this family. Patricia took one bite. Just one. Then she pushed the dish away and announced to the entire room, "This is not how we do it in our family. The seasoning is all wrong. Did you even taste it before you brought it?" The room fell silent. Everyone stared at me. Stephanie Marcus's younger sister smirked. Harold shook his head in disapproval. And Marcus, my husband, the man who was supposed to be my partner, laughed and said, "Rosa is still learning, Mum. Give her a few more years." I excused myself and went to the bathroom. I locked the door, sat on the cold tile floor and cried until my eyes were swollen. Lily was only 5 years old, but somehow she knew something was wrong. When I came out, she was waiting for me in the hallway. She took my hand and squeezed it tight. "Mummy, why are you sad?" she asked. I knelt down and hugged her. "I am okay, sweetheart. Mummy is okay." But I was not okay, and I would not be okay for a very long time. Stephanie's treatment of me only got worse after that Christmas. She was going through a difficult period in her own marriage, though I did not know the details at the time. All I knew was that she seemed to resent my very existence. She would make snide comments whenever we were in the same room. "Rosa always looks so put together. I wonder how she has time for that when she works full-time. Oh, wait. Maybe that is why her house is always a mess. It must be nice to have such a successful husband. Some of us are not that lucky. Rosa, have you gained weight? You should be careful. Marcus likes his women fit." I tried to befriend her. I invited her to lunch, offered to babysit when she needed a break, sent her thoughtful gifts on her birthday. But nothing worked. The more I tried, the more she pulled away. The more she pulled away, the meaner she became. I did not understand it then, but I think Stephanie saw something in me that she hated about herself. She saw a woman trying desperately to hold her life together, and it reminded her of her own failures. Instead of finding solidarity, she chose cruelty, and I became her favorite target. Marcus never intervened. He never told his sister to back off or his mother to be kinder. He just watched, sometimes laughed, and always changed the subject. I started to feel like a stranger in my own marriage, like I was playing a role that no one had bothered to give me the script for. But I kept going. I kept smiling. I kept cooking and cleaning and bending and breaking, because I believed that love was sacrifice. I believed that if I just tried hard enough, things would get better. I was wrong. 5 years ago, Marcus got the promotion he had been chasing for nearly a decade. He became a regional manager at his real estate company, complete with a corner office, a company car, and a salary that nearly doubled overnight. I was genuinely happy for him. I thought this success would bring us closer, would ease some of the tension that had been building in our home. Instead, it made everything worse. Marcus changed almost overnight. The man who once picked wildflowers for me started criticizing everything I did. My clothes were not stylish enough. My makeup was too plain. My opinions were embarrassing. My presence was a liability. "You embarrass me sometimes," he said one evening after a company dinner. "Everyone else's wife knows how to hold a conversation. You just sit there looking uncomfortable." "Can you at least try to dress better?" he asked before another event. "I have a reputation to uphold now." I tried to adapt. I spent an entire month's bonus on a new wardrobe. I watched YouTube tutorials on makeup and conversation skills. I read articles about how to be the perfect executive wife. I transformed myself into someone I barely recognized, all in the hopes of earning my husband's approval. It was never enough. The more I changed, the more he demanded. The more I gave, the more he took. And somewhere along the way, I lost myself completely. Family gatherings became a special kind of torture. Every visit to Patricia and Harold's house felt like walking into a courtroom where I was always the defendant. Marcus would tell stories designed to make me look incompetent, and his family would laugh along. There was one incident that still haunts me. Lily was about 10 years old, and her school had a parent-teacher conference scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. Marcus and I had discussed it the week before. He promised to pick her up since I had an important meeting that could not be rescheduled. I confirmed with him twice, and he assured me he would handle it. But when 3:30 came and went with no sign of Marcus, I got a frantic call from the school. Lily was the only child left in the pickup area. She was crying, convinced that something terrible had happened to us. I abandoned my meeting and rushed to get her, my heart pounding the entire drive. When I finally reached the school, Lily ran into my arms, sobbing. I held her and apologized over and over, even though it was not my fault. That weekend at Sunday dinner with the family, Marcus told his version of the story. Rosa forgot to pick up Lily from school, he announced casually, cutting into his steak. Poor kid was stranded for an hour. I had to leave work early to sort out the mess. I stared at him in disbelief. That is not what happened. You were supposed to pick her up. We talked about it. He looked at me with cold eyes. Rosa, you know your memory has been terrible lately. Maybe you should see a doctor. Patricia nodded in agreement. Stephanie rolled her eyes. Harold muttered something about responsibility. And Lily, my sweet Lily, looked at me with confusion and pain in her eyes. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I just sat there, letting the lies wash over me like a wave I was too tired to fight. But Lily knew the truth. She had heard us discussing the pickup plan. She remembered her father's promise, and from that day forward she started watching him more closely. As Lily grew older, she became my silent protector. She started noticing things that I had trained myself to ignore. The dismissive comments, the subtle put-downs, the way Marcus would take credit for things I had done. One evening, when Lily was 12, I thought she was asleep in her room. I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner when Patricia called to criticize the birthday gift I had chosen for Stephanie's son. It was cheap and thoughtless, she said. You should be ashamed of yourself. My son works so hard to provide for your family, and this is how you represent him. I apologized, as I always did. I promised to do better, as I always did. And when I hung up the phone, I leaned against the counter and let the tears fall. I did not hear Lily come downstairs, but suddenly she was there, wrapping her thin arms around me. Mum, she whispered, why do you let them talk to you like that? I wiped my eyes quickly, trying to compose myself. It is complicated, sweetheart. Grandma Patricia just has high standards. Lily shook her head. It is not high standards, Mum. It is mean. She is mean to you. Dad is mean to you. And I do not like it. I hugged her tighter, touched by her protectiveness, but also scared. I did not want her to grow up hating her father's family. I did not want her to carry the burden of my unhappiness. Dad is just stressed, I said, repeating the excuse I had used 1,000 times. And Grandma grew up in a different time. They do not mean to be hurtful. Lily pulled back and looked at me with eyes far too wise for her age. Mum, you always defend them. But who defends you? I did not have an answer. 2 years ago, Marcus's grandmother passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 93 years old, and although her death was not unexpected, it shattered me completely. Nana was the only person in Marcus's family who had ever truly loved me. She saw me, understood me, and accepted me exactly as I was. At her funeral, I stood alone near the back of the church, crying quietly. Marcus was at the front, huddled with Patricia Harold and Stephanie discussing the inheritance. They were arguing about who would get the house, who would get the antique furniture, who would get the jewelry. Not a single tear among them. I watched my husband bicker with his sister over material possessions, while the woman who raised him lay in a coffin just feet away. Something broke inside me that day, something I could not quite name. After the funeral, things got stranger. Marcus started receiving phone calls at odd hours. He would leave the room to answer them, speaking in hushed, tense tones. He started locking his computer with a new password. He became irritable and defensive whenever I asked about finances. "Stop nagging me," he snapped one night. "You are not my mother." I tried to dismiss my suspicions. I told myself it was grief, stress, work, pressure. But deep down, I knew something was very wrong. In the 6 months leading up to that fateful Thanksgiving, Marcus became a different person entirely. He was constantly on edge, checking his phone obsessively, startling at every notification. He started sleeping in the guest room, claiming he was working late and did not want to disturb me. We barely spoke anymore. When we did, it was usually him snapping at me for something trivial. The coffee was too weak. The house was too loud. My questions were too invasive. "Stop interrogating me," he said once when I asked how his day was. "I get enough of that at work." I walked on eggshells in my own home, afraid to trigger another outburst. I started counting the days until Lily went to college, fantasizing about a quieter life, one where I would not have to constantly manage someone else's moods. About 3 months before Thanksgiving, I went to withdraw some money from our savings account to pay for car repairs. The mechanic had quoted me $800, which I thought was manageable, given what we had set aside. But when I checked the balance, I felt the blood drain from my face. The account that should have held over $60,000 had less than $5,000 remaining. I called Marcus immediately, my hands trembling. "Where is the money?" I demanded. "Our savings account is almost empty." He sighed like I was a child asking a stupid question. "I invested it in a project at work. It is going to pay off big. Stop worrying about things you do not understand." Invested it without telling me. That was our emergency fund. That was Lily's college money. "I am handling it, Rosa. Trust me." But how could I trust him when everything felt so wrong? I wanted to press further, to demand receipts and explanations. But I was so used to backing down, so conditioned to avoid conflict, that I let it go. I should not have let it go. 1 month before Thanksgiving, Lily needed to use the family computer to work on a research paper for her history class. She came home from school, settled into the chair in our home office, and opened the laptop. Marcus had forgotten to log out of his email. What Lily found that afternoon changed everything. There were dozens of emails from online gambling sites, account statements showing deposits of hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars at a time, warnings about overdue payments, threatening messages from creditors. And then there were the emails from a private lending company. One subject line read, "Urgent. Your balance of $52,000 is now 30 days past due. Immediate action required." Lily told me later that she felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Her father, the man who criticized her mother for every small expense, had secretly gambled away their family's savings. The man who made her mother feel worthless for buying a new dress had lost enough money to pay for years of college. She did not tell me right away. She was scared of how I would react, scared of what it might mean for our family. So she did what any smart, observant teenager would do. She started gathering evidence. Over the following weeks, Lily paid close attention to her father's behavior. She noticed how he would disappear into the guest room for hours, claiming to be on work calls. She noticed how he would tense up whenever his phone buzzed. She noticed how he would check the mailbox before anyone else could get to it. One afternoon, she overheard him on the phone in the garage. She stood by the door, barely breathing, and listened. "I just need one more week," Marcus pleaded into the phone. "I will get the money from somewhere. I am good for it. You know I am good for it." There was a pause as the person on the other end responded. "No, my wife does not know. She cannot know. It would destroy everything. Just give me more time. I will figure something out." Lily stood there, her heart pounding, as the full weight of her father's deception sank in. He was not just a gambler. He was a liar. And he was using their family as collateral for his addiction. She took screenshots of every email. She recorded dates and times of suspicious phone calls. She built a case against her own father, waiting for the right moment to use it. That moment came on Thanksgiving. The morning of Thanksgiving started like every other holiday morning in our house. I woke up at 5 to start preparing. This year was special because it was the first Thanksgiving since Nana's passing, and I wanted to honor her memory by making her famous apple pie. I followed her recipe, exactly the one she had taught me in her warm kitchen all those years ago. I measured the flour with precision, cut the butter into perfect cubes, rolled the dough with the same wooden rolling pin she had given me as a wedding gift. As the pie baked in the oven, filling the house with the sweet smell of cinnamon and apples, I felt close to her again. Lily came downstairs around 8, still in her pajamas. She watched me work for a moment before speaking. "Mom, you look beautiful." I looked down at my flour-covered apron and laughed. "I am a mess, honey." "No," she said seriously. "You are beautiful, and today is going to be different. I can feel it." I did not know what she meant at the time. I thought she was just being sweet. I showered and put on the new dress I had bought specifically for this occasion. It was a deep burgundy color, modest but elegant. I applied a touch of makeup, styled my hair in soft waves, and looked at myself in the mirror. For a brief moment, I felt pretty, confident even. Marcus barely glanced at me as we loaded the car. He was tense, distracted, constantly checking his phone. Lily sat in the back seat, unusually quiet. Her own phone clutched tightly in her hand. The drive to Patricia's house took about 45 minutes. No one spoke. The silence felt heavy, loaded with unspoken words and hidden tensions. I stared out the window at the passing trees, their leaves already brown and falling, and tried to prepare myself for whatever lay ahead. When we arrived, Patricia greeted us at the door. She hugged Marcus warmly, complimented Lily on how tall she was getting, and then looked me up and down. "Rosa, did you do something different with your hair? It looks a bit flat." And just like that, the familiar knot in my stomach returned. The house was already full when we walked in. Stephanie was there, lounging on the couch with a glass of wine, looking glamorous in a way I could never pull off. Harold was in his usual spot in front of the television, watching football and grunting occasionally. Other relatives I only saw once a year milled about, making small talk and avoiding eye contact with me. I carried my pie into the kitchen, hoping to find a quiet corner where I could breathe. Patricia followed me. "What is that?" she asked, eyeing the pie suspiciously. "Apple pie," I said proudly. "I made it using Nana's recipe. I thought it would be a nice way to remember her." Patricia sniffed. "We will see if it is edible. Nana's recipe was very precise. I doubt you got it right." Before I could respond, she walked away, leaving me standing alone in her kitchen, clutching the pie like a shield. Dinner was served at 6 o'clock sharp. We all gathered around the large dining table, Patricia seated at the head, like a queen surveying her kingdom. The table was loaded with food, A turkey so large it barely fit on the platter, mashed potatoes, green beans, stuffing cranberry sauce. Everything looked perfect, but the tension was suffocating. As we passed dishes around the table, Stephanie started talking about her life post-divorce. She went on and on about how difficult it was to be single, how lonely the nights were, how unfair it was that some people got to keep their families intact while others suffered. Then she turned to me. "It must be nice, Rosa, having a husband who provides for you, having a stable home for your daughter. Some of us are not that lucky." I smiled tightly and said nothing. Stephanie was not finished. "By the way, how much do you make at that little accounting job of yours?" I felt my face flush. "Excuse me, your salary, how much is it?" Marcus answered for me. "Not enough to matter." Everyone laughed. Everyone except Lily. Stephanie continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "That must be hard. Marcus works so hard, and that is all you contribute. It is a good thing he is so patient." I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. But I just sat there, frozen, unable to find the words to defend myself. The conversation shifted to finances generally. Patricia asked about our savings, specifically about the fund we had set aside for Lily's college education. It was a pointed question, designed to showcase what a good provider Marcus was. Marcus's response stunned me. "To be honest, Mum Rosa is terrible with money," he said casually, taking a bite of turkey. "She probably spent most of it on clothes and makeup. I have stopped keeping track." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "That is not true. I have never touched that money." He looked at me with cold condescension. "This is exactly why I handle all the finances. Rosa cannot even balance a checkbook." Patricia shook her head in disappointment. Harold muttered something about fiscal responsibility. Stephanie smirked. "I always told Marcus he could do better," Patricia announced to the table. "Some women just know how to manage a household and some do not." Stephanie laughed. "Some women just do not know their place." And then Marcus delivered the final blow. He looked directly at me, his eyes empty of any warmth, and said, "Maybe if you were a better wife, I would not be so stressed all the time." The words hit me like a physical punch. I felt the tears welling up my hands, trembling in my lap. I could not breathe. I could not think. I could not speak. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of sacrifice, 15 years of bending and breaking and trying to be enough. And this was what I got in return. I was about to excuse myself to flee to the bathroom and cry, as I always did when something unexpected happened. Lily moved. In the midst of the laughter and the cruel comments, my 15-year-old daughter slowly pushed back her chair and stood up. The movement was so deliberate, so calm, that at first no one noticed. They were too busy enjoying my humiliation. But then the laughter faded, and all eyes turned to Lily. She stood straight, her shoulders back, her chin lifted. She looked nothing like a child in that moment. She looked like a warrior preparing for battle. "Lily, sit down," Marcus said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "This is adult conversation." Lily did not sit down. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She placed it on the table in front of her, the screen facing up. Then she looked directly at her father and spoke. "Dad, should I tell everyone here about the $50,000 you lost gambling? Or do you want to keep pretending Mom is the problem?" The silence was instantaneous. It was as if someone had pressed a mute button on the entire room. Every fork stopped moving. Every mouth stopped chewing. Every eye went wide. Marcus's face drained of color. He looked like a man who had just watched his entire world collapse. "Lily, he stammered. "What are you talking about? That is ridiculous." But Lily was not backing down. "Is it ridiculous, Dad? Because I have the emails right here. Dozens of them. From gambling sites, from loan sharks, from people threatening to take action if you do not pay up." She picked up her phone and began reading aloud. "Dear Mr. Marcus Henderson, your outstanding balance of $32,000 is now 60 days past due. Failure to remit payment will result in collection proceedings." She scrolled to another email. "This one is from a different company. It says your account has been flagged for suspicious activity and they are investigating potential fraud." Another scroll. "And this one. This is my personal favorite. It is from someone named Tony. He writes, 'You have until the end of the month to pay what you owe. Do not make me come find you.'" Sounds like a really professional business partner, Dad. Marcus was sputtering now, his composure completely shattered. "Those are fake. Someone must have hacked my email. Lily, you do not understand." "I understand perfectly," Lily said, her voice steady as steel. "I have been watching you for months. I saw you sneak out to the garage to make phone calls. I heard you begging for more time. I know you took the money from the savings account, the money that was supposed to pay for my college, the money Mum worked overtime to help save." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And here you are in front of your whole family calling Mum terrible with money, saying she is not a good wife, making her feel like she is worth nothing, when you are the one who has been lying and stealing and gambling away our future." The room remained frozen. Patricia looked like she had swallowed something sour. Stephanie's smirk had vanished entirely. Harold had stopped pretending to focus on his plate. Lily was not finished. "Mum works 2 jobs sometimes to make sure I have everything I need. She wakes up at 5 in the morning to take care of this family. She never buys anything for herself. She wears the same clothes for years because she puts everyone else first. And you have the nerve to humiliate her in front of everyone, while you are the one destroying our family." She turned to look at her grandparents. "And you," she said to Patricia, "you have spent 15 years making my mother feel like she is not good enough, but she is 10 times the person any of you are. She loved Nana more than any of you did. She actually cried at the funeral while you were arguing about the furniture." Patricia opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. I sat there in shock, tears streaming down my face, watching my daughter dismantle years of abuse with nothing but the truth. Pride swelled in my chest, mixing with the pain and the relief. And then something incredible happened. I found my voice. I pushed back my chair and stood up beside my daughter. For the first time in 15 years, I spoke without trembling. "I have spent 15 years trying to be enough for this family." I said, my voice clear and strong. "I bent over backwards to please all of you. I cooked the food you wanted. I dressed the way you approved. I smiled through every insult and swallowed every tear. I thought that if I just tried harder, you would finally accept me." I looked at Marcus, the man I had loved, the man I had given everything to. "But I am done. I am done being your punching bag. I am done being the villain in stories you made up to cover your own failures. I am done apologizing for existing." I turned to Patricia. "Mrs. Patricia, with all due respect, I do not need your opinion anymore. I never did. I was just too afraid to say it." Patricia's mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. I walked to the kitchen and retrieved my pie, the one I had made with so much love in memory of Nana. I carried it back to the dining room and held it up for everyone to see. "This was made with love," I said, "for Nana's memory, because she was the only person in this family who ever treated me like I mattered. But I do not think any of you deserve it." I set the pie back down on the counter. took my daughter's hand, and walked toward the door. "Rosa, wait," Marcus called out, his voice desperate. "We can talk about this. I can explain." I turned back to look at him one final time. "You can explain to your lawyer, because I am done explaining to you." And with that, Lily and I walked out of that house, leaving behind 15 years of pain, 15 years of silence, and a family that had never truly been mine. The drive home was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not the heavy, suffocating silence of before, but something lighter, something almost peaceful. Lily held my hand the entire way, her grip firm and reassuring. When we finally pulled into the driveway of our house, she turned to me. "Mum, I am sorry I did not tell you sooner about what I found. I was scared. I did not know what to do." I squeezed her hand and pulled her into a hug. "You were braver than I have ever been. You saved me, Lily. You saved both of us." We did not go inside that night. Instead, we drove to my best friend Karen's house and asked if we could stay for a few days. Karen took one look at my face and pulled me into her arms without asking any questions. The first few days were the hardest. I cried more than I thought possible. I cycled through every emotion: grief for the marriage I thought I had, anger at myself for staying so long, relief at finally being free. Some mornings I could barely get out of bed. Others I felt a strange lightness, like I had been carrying a boulder, and someone had finally helped me set it down. Lily stayed close to me throughout it all. She brought me tea without being asked. She sat with me in silence when I needed silence. She made me laugh when I needed to laugh. At 15, she was more mature than most adults I knew. About a week after Thanksgiving, I contacted a divorce attorney. Her name was Grace, a sharp woman in her 50s who had seen it all. I told her everything from the years of emotional abuse to the gambling debts to Lily's discovery. She listened without interruption, taking notes, her expression serious but kind. "Rosa," she said when I finished, "you have a strong case. The financial misconduct alone is significant. Combined with the emotional abuse and the documented pattern of behavior, I am confident we can secure a favorable outcome for you and your daughter." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of sadness and hope. Marcus tried to contact me multiple times in the weeks that followed. He sent texts, apologizing, promising to change, begging for another chance. He showed up at Karen's house, once flowers in hand, looking haggard and desperate. I did not let him in. I stood at the door, Lily beside me, and looked at the man I had loved for 16 years. "Marcus, I want you to listen to me carefully," I said. "You did not just gamble away our money. You gambled away my trust, my dignity, and 15 years of my life. There is no apology big enough to fix that." His face crumbled. "Rosa, please. I have a problem. I know that now. I am going to get help. I am going to be better." "I hope you do get help," I said honestly. "Not for me, but for yourself. And for Lily. But I cannot be the one to save you. I spent too many years trying to save a marriage that was slowly killing me." I closed the door and did not look back. The months that followed were a journey of rediscovery. Lily and I moved into a small but cozy apartment on the other side of town. It had 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a balcony that overlooked a park. It was nothing fancy, but it was ours. I started seeing a therapist, a gentle woman named Dr. Patterson, who helped me understand patterns I had been trapped in for years. She taught me that silence is not peace, that tolerance is not love, and that I deserved to take up space in my own life. Slowly, I started doing things for myself again. I bought a dress without feeling guilty. I went to dinner with friends without checking in with anyone. I read books for pleasure. I learned to cook meals I actually enjoyed instead of just what others expected. And I made that apple pie again. This time I made it for Lily and myself. We sat on our little balcony, watching the sunset, eating slices of warm pie, and talking about the future. "Mom," Lily said, licking cinnamon from her fingers, "you smile more now." I looked at my daughter, this incredible young woman who had stood up when no one else would. "I have a lot to smile about," I said. "I have you." Looking back on everything that happened, I have learned some things I want to share with you. I learned that silence is not peace. For years, I kept quiet to avoid conflict, thinking I was preserving harmony. But all I was doing was slowly erasing myself. I learned that tolerance is not love. I tolerated cruelty because I thought that was what good wives did. But real love does not require you to shrink. I learned that the people who hurt you the most are sometimes the ones you trusted the most. That does not mean you were stupid for trusting them. It means they were wrong for breaking that trust. And I learned that sometimes all it takes is one sentence to change everything. One moment of bravery, one person willing to speak the truth. My daughter taught me that speaking up is not disrespect, it is self-respect. I do not know what the future holds. The divorce is still being finalized. Marcus is in treatment for his gambling addiction. Patricia and Stephanie have not spoken to me since that Thanksgiving, and honestly, that feels like a blessing. But I know one thing for certain. I will never again let anyone make me feel like I am not enough. I spent too many years believing I had to earn my place in my own life. Now I know that I belong, that my voice matters, that my peace matters. And if you are watching this and you see yourself in my story, please hear me when I say this. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you do not have to keep shrinking to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. And sometimes the person who saves you is the one you least expect. For me, it was my 15-year-old daughter standing up at a Thanksgiving table and saying one sentence that changed my entire life. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a moment where someone unexpected stood up for you? Or maybe you were the one who finally found the courage to speak up for yourself. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. It helps more people find these stories and know they are not alone. And if you have not already, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next story. Share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you so much for being here with me. I am sending you strength wherever you are in your journey. Remember, you are enough. You have always been enough. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.